There are some nights that change you. Not the kind of change you notice right away. It sneaks up on you slowly, like a chill you can't shake no matter how many blankets you pile on. For me, that night happened back in 2023, and I haven't been able to stay anywhere alone overnight since. My fiancé, Marcus, and I had been scrambling to find a place to live. Our lease had run out, and we didn't want to commit to another full year in our old apartment. My dad happened to know someone, an old family friend named Gerald, who owned a rental property nearby. The previous tenants had both passed away, and Gerald was willing to rent it to us month to month at a rate we simply couldn't turn down. On paper, it sounded ideal. In reality, I was deeply uncomfortable from the moment I heard about the deaths. Gerald mentioned it casually, like it was a minor detail. Both residents had died inside the house within weeks of each other. He wasn't wrong that it was natural causes. They were elderly. But knowing that didn't make it easier. Marcus thought I was being dramatic. He'd joke around, making ghost noises when I walked down the hallway, waving his arms like a cartoon specter. He wasn't being cruel. That's just Marcus. But I had to draw the line more than once. The inside of the house needed some work. There was a dated tan carpet throughout, covered in stains. The one in the living room was especially hard to look at, a large, dark patch near the end table. The first day we moved in, Marcus asked Gerald about it point blank. What Gerald told us stopped me cold. The woman who lived there had fallen and struck her head on that table. The stain was from the blood. She was taken to the hospital that night and never came back. And just weeks before that, her husband had suffered a fatal heart attack. In the basement. I nearly walked out right then. But we needed a place, and sometimes you make the practical choice even when every instinct tells you not to. Gerald had workers come in within the first 2 days. The carpet was ripped out, hardwood floors were put in, and the whole interior was repainted. The transformation was remarkable. It started to feel less like a house frozen in grief and more like a home. Gerald also had a security system installed that announced every door opening with an automated voice. Annoying, yes, but strangely comforting. About 5 weeks after we moved in, Marcus left for his bachelor party weekend. He'd be gone from Friday to Sunday afternoon. I had our cattle dog, Rex, a quiet, watchful dog who rarely barked, and the security system. I told myself I'd be fine. Friday evening I came home from work, and there was something off in the air. I chalked it up to anxiety and ordered myself Thai food. Marcus hates it, so it felt like a small treat. I put on a comfort show and settled in on the couch. Around midnight, I turned off the TV and started heading to bed. That's when Rex ran to the basement door and started barking. Not his usual low howl. This was urgent, sharp, tense barking. The kind that means something is wrong. I tried to calm him, but he wouldn't stop. Against every reasonable instinct, I slowly opened the basement door and flicked the light on. Rex stopped barking and shifted to a low, constant growl. I stood at the top of those stairs and could not make myself go down. I tried taking a photo into the darkness below, but it was too dark to make out anything. I thought about the old man who had died down there. I shut the door, and Rex and I retreated to the bedroom. He didn't sleep that night. He sat at the foot of the bed, eyes locked on the door, occasionally releasing a quiet growl. That silent vigilance scared me more than his barking had. I barely slept. The next morning, I got up, made coffee, and tried to normalize the day. I decided to tackle some chores I'd been putting off. I gathered my laundry and walked into the laundry room. The washing machine was nearly in the center of the room. Nod shifted slightly. It had moved several feet away from the wall. I ran out of the room. When I came back and pushed it back into place, it took real effort. This was a heavy machine. I should have heard it move. I didn't hear anything. I called Marcus and told him everything. He believed me mostly, but he's always been someone who needs a rational explanation. He told me he'd head back earlier than planned, first thing Sunday morning. The worst wasn't behind me yet. Saturday night, something loud enough to shake the walls would set off my garage camera, and what that footage showed didn't have any easy explanation. And then, at 3:39 in the morning, I heard the front door open. Saturday night, I did what I could to stay calm. I grabbed food, curled up on the couch with Rex, and put on something easy to watch. At 9:18 p.m., a sound hit the house like a thunderclap, loud enough to make me jump even over the volume of the TV. A split second later, my phone buzzed with a notification from the garage camera. The garage door was open in the footage. We never used that door. Our vehicles were too large for the space, so the garage was purely for storage. In the clip, you could see bright flashes coming from the driveway. The sound on the video made it seem like fireworks. But when I opened the interior door to the garage and looked out, the driveway was completely empty. No debris. No burn marks. Nothing. I saved the video, closed the garage door, and spent the next hour checking and rechecking the security alarm before I could even think about sleep. Rex was back at his post at the foot of the bed, growling softly every few minutes. I finally fell asleep. At 3:39 a.m., someone was pounding on the front door. Not knocking. Pounding. Relentless, rapid blows against the door. I lay frozen in bed. Rex had the bedroom door blocked and couldn't get out. I couldn't move. Then, in the silence between two rounds of pounding, I heard it, the electronic voice of the security system saying clearly, "Front door open." I scrambled to lock the bedroom door and grabbed my phone to call for help. The screen lit up black. I pressed the button again and again. Nothing. Just that dead black screen. That was the moment I started crying. I could actually see the bedroom doorknob vibrating, shaking in its frame. Somehow I managed to get my phone working and called the police. Officers arrived quickly and swept the entire house. They found nothing. No intruder. No sign of forced entry. The front door was wide open, but nothing was stolen, and there was no evidence of anyone having been inside. I showed them the garage camera footage. One officer suggested kids with fireworks. As for the door, they said it was probably the wind. On a humid July night. A door with a deadbolt. By the time the police left, the sky was beginning to lighten. I packed up Rex, drove to my parents' house, and stayed there until Marcus came home Sunday. He took it seriously enough to be concerned, even if he wasn't ready to call it paranormal. We stayed at that rental for 2 more months before finding our new place. In the 3 years since that weekend, nothing like it has ever happened again. But I haven't forgotten a single second of it. That was story 1. But the next account comes from someone whose terrifying night started with a stranger waving at him from a bar parking lot. A woman he would later find standing alone in his kitchen in the middle of the night. I used to live next door to a bar. There was a row of trees separating my property from theirs, but if you stood in my driveway at the right angle, you could see the side entrance where people went out to smoke. Most nights it was tolerable. Weekends were a different story. I worked retail at the time, which meant I was almost always trying to sleep while the bar crowd was at its loudest. I got used to the noise. I even got used to the occasional drunk who'd wander up to the wrong door. What I wasn't ready for was the night it became something far more dangerous. My best friend Kara came over on a Saturday evening. We've known each other since elementary school. She's more like family than a friend. She'd been on a mission to help me find someone to date since, as she liked to point out, I was absolutely hopeless at meeting people on my own. I'm a homebody. I love comic books, my collectible figures, a quiet night in. Approaching strangers at bars? That sounded more frightening than any horror movie. We had a good night. Food, conversation, Kara's characteristically blunt dating advice. Around 10 p.m., her girlfriend called to say she was heading out of work. I walked Kara to her car, we said goodbye, and I watched her drive off. That's when I heard the noise from the bar. A group of 7 or 8 women were outside, clearly having a good time. Loud, laughing, not trying to be quiet. I was about to turn and go back inside when I noticed one of them looking in my direction. She was standing slightly apart from the group, and she wasn't laughing. She was just watching me. I looked around to see if she could have been looking at someone else. There was nobody. Then she waved, slowly at first, then with more energy when I didn't respond. Hesitantly, I waved back. She blew a kiss. I smiled awkwardly and went inside. She clearly had a few too many. I put it out of my mind and started playing video games. A rare weekend off deserved something enjoyable. Around 1:30 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Gentle, brief. I looked through the window. Nobody there. Figured it was someone from the bar being rowdy. My heart rate settled. About 15 minutes later, I got up to check again. Nobody at the door. But the light inside my car was on. And the driver's door was slightly open. More annoyed than scared, it had happened before. I went outside, checked the back seat, confirmed it was empty, locked the car, and went back in. When I stepped inside and closed the door, I smelled something. A floral perfume, faint but unmistakable. Lavender, maybe. I assumed whoever had been at the door was wearing too much of it, and the scent had drifted in. I didn't think more of it. I finished up on the computer, shut down my game, and headed to bed. I'd put on a movie to drift off to. At some point, I'm not sure exactly when, I heard something that made me reach over and turn the TV off entirely. Footsteps. Light, rapid footsteps moving around the outside of my room. And then, a soft giggle. I shut my bedroom door, grabbed my phone, and called the police. I told them someone had broken into my house from the bar next door. And then I waited. At some point the footsteps stopped. I quietly picked up one of my dad's old golf clubs from my closet and eased out of the bedroom. I moved through the hallway, into the living room, nothing. Into the kitchen. She was standing with her back to me, staring out the window. Small, blonde, wearing a tattered pink dress. It was her. The woman from outside the bar. Before I could speak, she said, still facing the window, "Hey, buddy! I know you're there!" Then she spun around and ran straight at me. I bolted to the bathroom and locked the door. She knocked and pleaded on the other side until I heard police voices inside the house. When I came out, she was gone, but a steak knife from my kitchen was lying on the floor just outside the bathroom door. The back door was open. She'd run. The next day, officers went to the bar. The owner recognized the description immediately. He'd thrown her out that night for bothering customers. She'd lingered outside, and he'd threatened to call police before she finally disappeared. The only way she could have gotten in was when I went outside to close my car door. She must have been hiding nearby and slipped through while I wasn't looking. I never saw her again. That was unnerving enough. But story 3 might be the most disturbing of all, because this time, the intruder wasn't a stranger. He knew her name, and he'd been living in the crawl space above her bedroom for weeks. I spent most of my adult life alone by choice. I'd built a successful interior design business. I traveled constantly. I met fascinating people all over the world. And then I came home to my own space, exactly the way I liked it. No roommates. No complications. Just me. I'm in my mid-30s. And up until last year, I had never felt unsafe in my own home. Now, for the first time in my life, I have a roommate. This is why. I'd worked hard for years to afford my dream home, and I'd been living in it for about 6 months when things started to feel wrong. It started with a noise. I worked from a home office in the lower level of the house. During the day, while I was working, I'd occasionally hear a shuffling sound from somewhere above me. Not constant, just intermittent. Like someone dragging a box across the floor. Brief, but sharp enough to break my concentration every time. The first few times I ignored it. Once it became a pattern, I started investigating. I'd hear the sound, stop everything, go upstairs, stand completely still, and hear nothing. No explanation. No source. I started to feel like I was going a little crazy. Eventually I settled on the most logical answer: squirrels. I'd grown up with them getting into the walls of my parents' house, and I knew from experience how disruptive they could be. I made a mental note to call someone about it, and went back to work. For several more days, the shuffling continued. I kept leaving myself reminders to call pest control. The notes piled up. I never quite got to it. Then one night, I was working late, well past 2 a.m., and finally made my way to bed. As I lay there in the dark trying to fall asleep, I heard the shuffling again. This time it was different. Instead of the usual quick burst, it was continuous, slow, sustained movement above me. I stood up on my bed and pressed my ear toward the ceiling. The shuffling stopped, and then I heard breathing. I told myself I was imagining things. I thought about my crawl space, a small, low-clearance attic space above my bedroom, accessible by a pull-cord ladder. I'd never used it for anything. It was barely big enough to move around in. It was directly above where I was sleeping. I pulled a chair over, reached up and grabbed the cord, and worked the ladder down. It stuck at first. When it finally released, I climbed up just far enough to poke my head through the opening. It was dark, the kind of dark that absorbs your flashlight before it reaches anything useful. I could make out 2 large structural beams on either side of the space. I saw nothing else. I climbed back down, secured the hatch, and told myself to calm down. I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch with the TV on, drifting in and out. At some point, I jolted awake. I'd heard a creak, a long, unmistakable creak, like a door opening slowly. I swept through the house. Living room, empty. Kitchen, empty. Hallway, empty. I looked up toward the bedroom end of the hall. The pull cord from the crawl space hatch was hanging down, and it looked like it was swaying. I was certain I'd pushed it back up. Nearly certain. My hand was shaking as I walked down the hall. My bedroom door, which I always leave fully open, was almost completely shut. I pushed it open. It let out a loud creak, the exact sound I'd heard from the couch. The room looked untouched. I was about to leave when I noticed something on the floor next to the bed. A small clump of dirt. I crouched down to look at it, and as I got closer to the floor, I heard that sound again, faint, rhythmic. Breathing. I bent lower and looked under the bed. A man was lying there. middle-aged, watching me, motionless, eyes locked on mine. I screamed and fell backward. He didn't move, but he spoke. "It's okay, Julie. It's okay." He knew my name. I scrambled to my feet, ran downstairs, grabbed my phone, got in my car, and drove. There's a 24-hour diner near my house. I went inside shaking, sat in a booth, and called the police. Officers went to the house. They searched it top to bottom. He was gone. But behind one of the support beams in the crawl space, they found several empty water bottles and a small pillow. He'd been living up there. For how long, I don't know. I spent the next month in a motel. I'd put a full surveillance system in the house when I finally came back. In the years since, that man has never resurfaced. No arrest was ever made. I have a theory about who he was. A family acquaintance my father had to cut off years ago. Someone who had shown an unsettling fixation on me. The man under my bed looked like an older version of him. But whether it was him or a stranger, someone had gotten into my home, found their way into my crawl space, and had been living there quietly above my bedroom. He knew my name. He'd been watching. And somehow, locking your doors isn't always enough when someone has already decided to get in. 3 stories. 3 people who thought they were safe in their own homes, until they weren't. Whether it was an unexplained force, a stranger who slipped through an open door, or someone hiding just a few feet above where you sleep, the truth is the same. Home doesn't always mean safe. If these stories kept you up tonight, good. Stay alert. And if you want more true stories that will make you check your locks twice, you know where to find them.